Just waiting for the old stream to come on. I'm a little bit blurry today. I don't know why. I think my camera's having a bit of a moment. But lights are flashing here, so audio is going through, visuals going on there, so that's all good. And I have the green light on the old Twitch. So good morning, everyone. This morning it's Friday. It's 7:35. I'm a little bit late. I do apologise. I had a bit of a rough one last night. The old cat, Flick the cat, brought in a frog, so I had to deal with that. But anyway, that's another story for another day. We are going to be continuing on with the streams, continuing on with the project, continuing on with the FreeCodeCamp invoice project, which is object orientated. It's using PHP. It's not using any frameworks whatsoever, apart from obviously Codeception for the libraries and stuff. And last week we were playing around with, I haven't had any tea this morning. Yesterday we were playing around with the MySQL insert and update queries, and what I would like to do today is play around with that a little bit more and make it a little bit more intelligent, because at the moment we have a static method for inserting records into the database, and we've got a static method for updating them too. What I would like is to have another method, which is insertOrUpdate, which intelligently decides what it's going to do based on what you supply or what options you supply. So I'm going to just try and move that from the desk, and we're going to go to the code. So I do apologize. This morning's a bit... I'm feeling a bit worse for wear. So let's see. Where are we on here? So yesterday we did this query builder test. There we go. And we did the update. This is the testing, I think, of the invoice, and we also did the inserting of the customer. Fine. And I believe somewhere we also did an update as well, maybe. Insert. Perhaps we didn't. I thought we did. Set. Insert. Oh yeah, here we go. Update. So we've got query builder update, and we've also got query builder insert. All right. What I would like is I would like to have insert or update. So this is where we left off in the last stream yesterday. So I basically want to populate this, supplying in the parameters, and then this method, this static method, this utility method will decide whether or not we are going to be inserting new records or updating. And this essentially will replace all of the code smells, or most of them at least, that are in, say, these managers. So these managers here, these save routines for each of these managers, build the query, and then you decide what parameters you want to put in, and then you run the query. Okay, so you build the query, then you run the query. And as I mentioned yesterday, this is doing an awful lot of responsibility here. There's lots of stuff going on. It's not only is it deciding whether or not it's going to be doing an insert or update, but it's also building the query out. It's then adding the parameters, and then it's connecting to the database. Then it's executing the query. Then it's hydrating certain parts of the entity, whether or not it was. Whether or not the initial entity didn't have an ID or not, it will set that ID. So there's a lot involved here. And essentially what I would like to do is the similar thing that we have in Invoice Manager, I believe, where I am doing this insert or update, and I'm passing in the data, the title, and I probably need to put in a where clause, because, you know, if you're doing an update, you need to know what you're updating. You shouldn't just update everything. That's bad. So, okay. I think for the sake of concentration and everything, I need to take some tea. So just bear with me a minute. Yep, that worked. Okay. So, in the query builder test, then at this point here, we need to make a test that will fail, a failing test. And if I scroll to the top, we did have, no, I've removed it. We did have our control test, a sort of test of what it should do in the mechanism. But I think I can just code this out, because essentially what's happening is, depending on what you supply in here, depending on what that decides, it's just going to call itself and then call the insert or call the update routine. Okay. That is cool. Let me just, I haven't even got the Docker machine running yet, so bear with me just a second. I think I have it running. I've started it. I just need to jump into it. There we go. Yeah, cool. So let's just get into that as bash. Marvelous. And then let's just run the DB query tests as they were yesterday, although that hasn't returned it. It's query builder, isn't it? Marvelous. So we know that they work, which means that, if anything breaks, then it's something that I've screwed up today. This is passing. Now, why this is passing is because this is returning a blank string. So it's kind of like I created a bunch of code stubs yesterday. So it's just returning a blank string. But really what we want it to return is, if we let's say we want to do an insert. So we want to basically mimic this. So I'm going to copy that. And this will now become the expected string, right? Because we want to mimic this insert. So let's do expected insert. All right, and then let's do expected update. So I'm going to just delete that. And the expected update is this one here. There we go. So let's change that to be expected. Run the query. Sorry, that's expected update, isn't it? Run that query, update. That should now fail. Yeah, because we've got that method is returning a blank string, but this is what we want to return. I'm going to work on the insert first, okay? Okay, so like we've done with with this one, we basically want to mimic this essentially. Was I doing invoice or was I doing, I can't remember, it was customer. Okay, never mind, it doesn't matter. So I want to copy all of this really. Like so, and I want to pass data in here, and I want to pass in the table name like so, okay? And because it knows of this stuff, and it doesn't have the where clause, it should automatically run the insert. So let's just save that. Run this, and of course it's going to fail. Of course, it's going to fail. So let's work that through. So let's go into the insert or update. This will take an array, which is the data. It's also going to take a string, which is the table name. So it's very similar, right? It's very similar to this one. Okay. We're also going to pass in a where clause. So we're going to do where, and I think this is also going to be an an array, and this is just going to be a blank array to begin with. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're supplying the data array, the table name, and a blank array for the where clause. Excuse me. Okay, so let's run this. So this is where the intelligence runs. So if we could do if empty where, okay, so if that array is empty, then we do the insert. So we do SQL is equal to self, because it's static and it's the one that we're dealing with, we do insert, and that is data, and then we put in the table name. Okay, and then that returns the SQL. Else, what we want to be doing is we want to be doing the update, but we haven't. That's going a little bit too far. So let's just equal SQL to a blank query string for now. Okay, so then that will run the insert, which we've dealt with up here. Okay, there's no need to rewrite all of this stuff. This whole point of doing this is to have a little bit of code reuse, and then have this sort of decorator method. I guess it's a decorator method. Really, it's a bit too early to use terms like that. I think it's a method that will well, it's more of an adapter really, because it will adapt based upon the parameters here as to what you want to be doing, whether it's an insert or an update. Okay, so let's save this. Let's run that and see what's going on. So that has passed because we want to, because that was an insert, so that has worked. Marvelous. So let's scroll back into here. So this is, let's just make this a little bit more verbose. So it's test insert or update. Let's just do with no where. All right. With no where. Okay. It really should be with no where clause, to be honest, with no where clause. Okay, and you may have guessed it, I'm going to create a new test like this. Woo, ba 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 ba, da 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 da, like this, and this is going to be it's insert or update with where clause. Surprise, surprise, with where clause, like that. Okay, and what we want to do, so I can now remove this expected update. We can also now just, change that to be expected. And change that to be, sorry, it's this one, isn't it? We want to remove the insert because we're now dealing with the update, like so. Now this is running obviously the invoice. So what we should do is we should copy, where are we? This, here. So do this stuff here. So we're going to copy that, paste that in. We have the where, and this is the optional third parameter that we pass in like so. Excuse me. Okay, so this is what we're hoping for. I haven't written any code yet to actually deal with this mechanism, but which means that we can run this test. So I'm just going to hit save, and then I'm going to run that test. And we failed because we do have the empty string. So this is this has captured this possibility. If we go into, I can just I don't need to do that. Let's, no. There we go. If I open that up, now we need to address the other side of the condition. So we have this where clause. So if empty where. Okay. So that does the insert. Then we do an else. And this becomes, if I can spell SQL, this becomes an update because we pass in the data, we pass in the table name, and we pass in the where clause. And that is our little switch, and there's no need to have that default one up there because it will either be an insert or it will be an update. Now we need to just check something a minute. Let's just go back before I run this test. I just want to read my own code for a second. So I just want to just clarify a couple of things. This here is the ID. So this is the field name, and this is the ID that we want to supply here. So that goes into there, right? That makes sense. That now goes into the insert. this is now in here, so that's no longer empty, like so. That then goes into the update. Let's open that up. We have the where clause there, and what we're doing here is for each where as key, and then value. Okay. Okay, I think that's pretty cool. I think that's good. I'm going to just put in some comments or some doc blocks, and that's looking pretty good. I'm going to run the test and see what happens. Yeah, test worked. So now we've got this mechanism, the insertOrUpdate mechanism, which means now, because I have done this, it means now that we can, and we have a level of confidence that this works. And that's justified by the tests passing. We can now actually go into the where are we? We can actually go into these managers and start changing them. Do we have manager tests? This is the question. Do we have a manager test? Let me just have a little hunt around. I think we do. Maybe we don't. Helper. This is HTTP. Do we have entities? We've got entity tests. We've got connection tests. No, it doesn't look like we've got manager tests. Okay. So what would be needed for a manager test? This is sort of testing the whole shebang. We've kind of covered this point here. The manager test would also test, of course, this stuff too. Okay. I think what I'm going to do... oh, hang on a minute. Maybe we do. Sorry. In acceptance... customer entity. Yes, we do. Of course we have manager tests. Of course. Of course we do. Manager set save. Right. Sorry, I apologize. Let's run those. Let's just run those to get a baseline. So this is running the DB. Okay. So these are acceptance tests because it's more of an integration. The unit tests that I've just run, all they're doing is building the query. They're not actually running the query. They're just building the query. So we want to make sure that when we do refactor this code and swap out the mechanism to the new mechanism, we want to make sure that we haven't broken anything. That's why I wanted to check whether or not we had manager tests, and it looks like we do. So I'm just going to remove all of this. This is now an acceptance. And we're going to do a group of DB, because you can see here that we're running DB group, like so. There we go. All right, so let's run those. Okay, so these are the acceptance tests, and you can see that they're running a little bit slower, right? Because they are actually manipulating the database. This is actually putting stuff in. We have got an error here. Insert with status test has failed. Okay, so let's address that. First, because we don't want to be making anything worse, and we want to make sure our ducks in a row before we actually do anything else. So invoice entity test. Let's pin that one out. I guess this is in here. Yeah, does it give you a line number? This is the PDO. So it's the bound bits and pieces aren't right. So where are we? Invoice state with status test. DB line 96. Line 96. So I was basically on it. So here. Insert with status test. Okay, so why is this failing? So let's scroll up. The error is that the PDO execute has an invalid parameter number. Number of bound variables does not match the number of tokens. This means, if you ever get that, it means that if we go into the manager and save, it means that these do not match that. Okay, these. It doesn't the amount of parameters. Sorry, I'm chewing my words here. the amount of parameters that you're supplying, all these question marks, do not match the parameters that you're supplying in here, right? So it was these are the parameters, these are the fields, I should say, and these are the parameters. I'm thinking it's because of this, right? I'm thinking it's because of that there. This is just pseudocode. So I'm just going to remove this. I should have removed that before. I do apologize if anybody has been using that code. So let's run that. It's still broken. Let's scroll up to the top. And it's broken because of, I think it's because we're trying to save a status and we don't have status in here, reference, total, and VAT. And we're passing in entity get status, instance of status, data in there. So that goes in there. But of course, we haven't hacked up this. That is the problem. I'm reckoning this insert update mechanism will solve that, I think. But quickly, how can we get that test to just run? We would have to hack up this SQL, and that's going to take a little bit of time. Okay, I think for this, what I'm going to do, just to see if this works, is I'm going to comment this out. All right, I'm going to comment the whole thing out, that whole block out, and I'm going to do. Excuse me. I'm going to do DB. Was it? No, it was Query Builder, wasn't it? Query Builder. I'm going to do insertOrUpdate. The data is obviously going to be the data that's coming back from the entity. So I need to populate that. But we also need to decide upon the ID and also the table name. So let's just fill this out. So we got data is equal to an array. We have the table name. This is equal to invoice. And we have the where clause, which is also equal to a blank array. So where equals blank array. So we can fill this out. Data, table, and where. And obviously this becomes our SQL. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to get the data from the entity. So I could do, let's do entity. Well, let's do that. Let's grab these names. So the reference is the first one, then the total, then the VAT, and of course we have the status ID. Whoops. Okay, come on. So let's bring those down. The reference here is going to be entity get reference. The total is also going to be entity entity. We've got get reference. This is get total. The VAT is get VAT. Whoops. Okay, so now we need to decide whether or not we want to do the status ID. So if we do if entity get status is an instance of status. So this is the same mechanism as what's going on here. I might as well just copy it, to be honest. There we go. Let's make that a little bit more tidier. Okay. So now we are adding the status to the data if there is an ID. If it is an ID, if it is the instance of that, we get the ID of that. Fine. Okay. So now we need to work on the where clause. So we do if entity get ID, and then we can do null 1 2 3. If it isn't null, then we do where ID is equal to entity get ID. Okay, wonderful. Okay, so that can go. This then therefore becomes the mechanics of the whole thing. So let's do a where is equal to blank array, empty array. Okay, so we've got this data is the data that we know we need to have, right? This is the data that it isn't nullable. This has to be there, okay? The status, however, will be there sometimes. It is nullable, and therefore we have to check whether it's there. This is the whole problem with this test failing, because it was too rigid. The actual insert statement was too rigid. It didn't cope with the fact that we wanted to add another value to this data, right? Because essentially what we're doing, the problem here, if I just go through it, it's saying that there's an invalid number of parameters that are bound to this SQL statement. And this is because we added a parameter in here, which is the status ID, but we didn't change and we didn't manipulate the values, and we didn't add another one to here. So that should have been, we should have put in status ID there, and we should have had another question mark going on here. That is the whole point of this this new intelligent way of doing this. This is still a little bit of a code smell. I mean, you know, don't get me wrong, this is still a bit of a code smell. There's a lot that can go wrong here. But essentially this whole insert update jobby should cope with that. Now the question becomes, how do we deal with the update when the where clause actually let's not worry about that too much. I'm thinking ahead. Okay, so with that all commented out and that now running, and we have a failing test, like it's literally failing. Let's see if we can run it, and let's see if anything else falls apart. A lot of things fall apart. Okay, fair enough. Parameter was not defined. Okay, I see. Okay, let's pick these things off one by one, because these are because this is an update. This is an insert, right? So let's pick these things off one by one. And I think I know why the update was failing, whereas the I think that's because there isn't an ID in here. So this might be a little bit tricky. This might get a little bit hairy. So let's pick these off. Let's go into the tests here. Let's do one by one. Okay, let's do one at a time. So insert with status test. That's the one we're going to be focusing on. So we're going to do db or g, and then we're going to run that. So this is failing. We're only doing one test at a time because, you know, we want to focus on this. We want to limit the amount of noise that we're getting from the feedback here, because there's more than one failing. So invalid parameter number. Parameter was not defined. Invalid parameter number. Parameter was not defined. Okay, that's a bit peculiar. Invalid parameter number. Parameter was not defined. Wow, okay. Let's see, if I remove that, does it work? No. No, so it doesn't appear to care about whether or not there is a status. Oh, that does need to be status. Sorry, ID. That does need to be a thing, but because I've removed it, that's not going to make a difference. because of course these are the field names. Sure. Okay, let's see. Insert or update. Data, table, and where. And this is insert with status. So let's just nuke the possibility of a where clause. So let's just return that like this. Okay, so we are definitely running on an insert. Okay, that's still a problem, and it's still that issue. Parameter was not defined. So this is like there's a parameter here that isn't set. So if we go into insert update, the parameters are based upon the data that we supply. Because this is empty, we want to do an insert. So this is going into here. So it's complaining that there is a problem with this mechanism of actually building out the form bits and pieces. Not the form, the field bits and pieces. Okay. So when we got this kind of problem, what we could do is we could write another test specifically for this, which tests the insert routine. So let's have a look. So I'm going to just grab that. We're going to run exactly the same as what we would have, data and everything. So I'm even going to go to the extreme of just copying that, going into here, and actually just setting up everything as it would do. Okay, so we're even going to set up the entity. So entity is equal to new invoice entity, and we're going to do entity set reference. Let's do foo set total, and that's 1. Set VAT, and that's 1. We also need to instantiate a status. This is status. Set internal name, we're just going to have test. Set name is also test. We're also going to do, we're going to sort of mock in a ID. So set ID, we're just going to do 2. And then here we can do set status, and that becomes the status that we've just passed. Okay, which means now that the data, we can now pull all this out. So reference VAT, and we've got that. Okay, so now we do the insert or update. We don't need to worry about the where clause because we're not going to worry about that. This is doing an update. We need to, this is going to fail because we don't have that status ID in here, but that's okay. We'll get it failing first. Okay, so this is DB query insert or update. Invoice with status. Update. Invoice with status. Okay. So at the moment, I really have no idea as to what's going on, why the parameters are not defined. So I'm creating a unit test to break apart this piece of logic here. I'm sure, I mean, there's obviously a logical reason I'm not setting something. And when this happens, it's good to sort of take a step back and go, right, okay, let's have a little look at the logical pieces and see what is going on here. So we're going to copy that and we're going to paste this in. There we go. So that should fail, which it does. And the thing I was really looking for is this thing here, status ID. I wanted to make sure that the status ID was running. Obviously, this is an update, right? This is an update. Or was it an update? Let's scroll. What was the original issue here? It was insert. It was an insert. Okay. Okay, so if we go back to the... Well, no, we can copy that, can't we? That's what we expect. Insert into. This is what we're expecting here. So if I run that, that should pass. And if I ran, if I did something like code sep debug, passing in the expected, and I ran this with debug, we should see, yeah, we've got this spat out here. So this is passing, so it's obviously not a problem with the mechanics of that, which is a bit weird. So I'm wondering then, therefore, if we go back to the broken test, which is somewhere, entity, invoice, helpers, acceptance. That's what they were. They were acceptance tests. Yeah. So if we take a look at the failing acceptance test, so insert with status. So we're creating a new status, fine. We're saving that status, fine. Okay, we are creating a new invoice with the save status, fine. And then we're saving that, okay. And then we are seeing whether or not these things are in the relevant in the database, right? Okay. So at this point here, when of the invoice, we have the total, the status, the VAT, and the reference. And then when we hit save, we are pulling all these things out with the status ID, reference, the total, the VAT, and the status ID, passing in the invoice, and then we're making that connection, and then we're saving it. So let's scroll up to the original issue, which is this one. Invalid parameter number. So the number of parameters were invalid that we've supplied, and a number and parameter was not defined. I don't know if that's and the parameter was not defined. Invalid parameter number, parameter was not defined. So that to me means that the data here was not set right. Okay. Let's go into the insertOrUpdate, passing in that. So the parameters are based upon all of this logic. So for I in a count of data, then we increment I, and we add all of these things, and then that becomes our little value block. So what it appears is that a parameter, like there was an extra question mark in here, but there wasn't an actual thing in the fields. All right. Okay, so I'm going to go back then, therefore, to here. We have VAT total, and we put in the status. I wonder, let me see, let me not bother putting in the status. Does this work without putting in the status? No. Okay. What I think I'm going to do is, it's obviously not working with this. Let's see if I can get it working with another one, which is a little bit more softer. We all know that the invoice itself is the most complicated table within this database because it's got lots of keys that we need to deal with. The easiest sort of testy one is the status here. So let's just focus on that for now. Hang on, it's this one. This is what I need. Okay, so let's just focus on that for now. And if this is broken, then it would mean that there's more to this issue than just the fact that I'm trying to associate the status to this. So let's see. So we have we're going to run the insert test first, okay, because that's the easiest one. So let's just make sure that works. Let's just copy that, run this in here, and yeah, hopefully, I'm basically now trying to look for clues, okay, as to why this isn't working. And the way I do that is I go, well, does it work with something else, right? And if it doesn't, because I assume that this should work, right? If I change the save routine here to not use this and to use, and instead I want the SQL to be running the query builder, insert or update, and I want it to be running data, and obviously the table. And I want this to be, I want the data to be an array. I want the table name to be status. Okay, and we're going to grab this from the data. Except for the ID. We also need to put in the actual field names. So this is name. And this is internal name. And then we're going to run this. I do apologize. I've just noticed that excuse me. I've just noticed that Equation Child has mentioned that there's a couple of things that he's spotted, which is awesome. It's always nice to have another. It's like pair programming, this live coding stuff. So thank you very much, Equation Child, for having a look at this. Line 150 strays a stray semicolon. In other words, if the if statement isn't evaluating to true, so status ID isn't being set. Huh. Okay. You have a compound condition and it's not satisfied. It's data that doesn't have the parameter, not the invoice. Yes. Guess this is just for recording and not really a Twitch interactivity. Well, sorry, I do apologize. I was so concentrating on what I was doing that I didn't notice, so I do apologize. So yes, there is a bit of interaction. It's just when I'm awake. So okay, let's see. Let's just run the status first. I do appreciate what equation child has mentioned, I'm going to have a look at that because I think that's correct what he said or what she said. Yeah, it's a compound condition, and so it's not being specified. That makes a lot of sense in my head. Let me just run this first because I've gone and hacked this up. I just want to make sure that this runs okay. So name, internal name, and then run that. Insert no. Okay, that's a bit bizarre. So this is the same thing, and yet it doesn't have that condition. It's just that's weird. Okay. This is obviously a fundamental issue. Invalid parameter number parameter was not defined. Do. Something screwed up. Something is screwed up. We are setting the name. We're setting the internal name. We're saving that. We're getting the name and we're getting the internal name. That becomes our data. That becomes our little data block. So it's almost like this isn't, these aren't actually being set to anything. Like this is empty. Yeah, I'm a little bit confused here. Whoops, sorry, I clicked off of that. Yeah, I'm a little bit confused. It's probably because it's 8:22 in the morning, and I haven't had a lot of sleep. But yeah, okay. So we set the internal name. And we save that. We deal with the SQL, right? And then the data is also being used in the execute. So that looks fine. Hold on. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay, let's take this. Let's break this apart. Let's instead of that, let's return the SQL. Right. And then let's go into the test, which is in here. So this now returns the SQL. And let's do a code sep debug of SQL. And let's see if we can run that. Empty string is returned. Save must. Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's because I need to hack up the actual return of this. So let's break that. Let's just set that to be a string for now. Did that? Am I running that with debug? No, of course I'm not. So, okay, we're connected. It's not actually printing anything out, is it? Oh, insert into status name, internal name with the value of question mark and question mark. So that's weird. That is exactly what I expected. That's exactly what should be happening. Insert into name and internal name. So that therefore means that it's nothing to do with the actual query. The query is actually being created in its expected as it is. Therefore, it's almost like it is something's happening between building the query and dealing with this. We prepare it, the SQL, and if you see, this here is exactly the same as this here. Insert into status with the name and the internal name with the values of question mark and question mark. So it is exactly the same thing. So I'm really confused. We then open the connection, which we've always done. We then prepare that, and we pass in the data. I think I might know what this is going on. Can you see the difference here? We are not supplying a field name, a key. These are numeric, whereas this isn't. We have got actual field names. So if this is the problem, then there's a couple of solutions here. One, we just return the array values. That's probably not the most performant way. Another way is we change this to actually be parameterized. So instead of the question marks, this is like question mark and then the name of that field. Let's just test this theory first, okay? Let's just test the theory first. So in here, what we could do is just do array values, because that will return an array. If I show you, this will return an array, an indexed array of values, right, based on the array that you supplied. So let's bring that back. We don't need to debug that anymore. Let's hit save. Let's make sure that that's all wired up. That's the status. That's good. Okay, array values. Let's hit save on that and let's see. Yes, so that was the issue. Okay, and just to make it clear, the original data didn't have any keys, right? Or the keys were numeric. And I guess when PDO puts these things together, they are relying on the fact that the parameters need to be numeric keys. Again, what I could do is instead of putting in these question marks, I could actually do something like this. So this is name, right? So I could do that. And then and for the insert, I would also do something like name or something like that, right? That will require a lot of work, or a fair amount of work, I suppose, to the actual mechanics of this. This here is the fix. I think what I'm going to do is make sure that the other tests work and this theory holds true with all of that before I start hacking about. I don't want it to be a case where there's too much broken tests, because then that's pointless and it's just noise. Okay. So I'm really happy with that. That's cool. So let's now see if we can get the other tests to run. Okay, so we're going to remove this for now. Actually, I might put it back because that also deals with the update, and we haven't dealt with the update yet. We need to do that. Let's tackle this this nasty save one on the status. So if we run this, let's just make sure that it's still failing. It's not copying in. Copy, copy, copy. And paste. Did that paste? Did that go in? No, it's just empty. Don't tell me I've got to copy that whole out word by word. That's going to be... here we go. All right, so this is failing. So as it was before. Okay, so the fix then is in save. If I can, if PHP Storm allows me to click on save, down here in the data where we are setting the array values. Because essentially what we're doing is we're re-indexing the array. We're removing these associative keys. All right. So this will be 0. This will be 1, 2, and then eventually 3. Okay. And because we've already built the SQL, you know, those field names are going to be in play. Okay. So let's save this. Let's run this, and fingers crossed that has worked, which I'm super stoked on. That's really cool. I'm happy with that. Let's put the where clause back in. And let's see now if we can get the whole thing running. Fingers crossed. So let's see. Make sure that all of these tests have that particular group. So DB, DB, and DB. Okay, good. Let's run the DB tests. Okay, there is an issue here, and the issue is that the update test failed. No matching records found for that criteria. Okay. So this was DB entities. This is testing the status, and I think I know why. Let's just open that up. Which line number is this? 60. 60, which would be down here, I think. Yep. Oops, sorry. Oh, excuse me. I do beg your pardon. So, okay, let's hit save. The reason why I think this is failing is because we don't have a where clause running in here. This is just the essentially doing the insert. So we need to do something very similar to the as we did with the invoice. So let's bring that back. Let's go into the invoice manager. Let's take this again. This is extremely similar code, so this could all be refactored at some point too. Let's bung that in there. Where goes in here. Okay, let's see if I can run that test individually. So which test was that? If I can find the tests now, where did the test go? Acceptance tests, aren't they? Status. There we go. DB status test. Okay, run that. That's still failing. Okay, what's going on here? So the number of bound variables does not match. Is this because on save? Is this now because there needs to be an ID in here? Oh, this is going to get awkward, isn't it? So I could either do it in here or I could do it within there. Okay, so I could either put data and then ID and then so forth in there, or If we are in the update, then we could do it in here, but that's going to get tricky and it's going to get a little bit messy, I think. Do. Okay, let's go to the status manager. Let's see. Okay, can I put in data ID? I'm just wondering, is this going to work? Invalid number of IDs, number of bound tokens, blah, 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 blah. Oh, come on. Okay, was it 8:36? Okay, that's no problem. We've still got a few minutes. I really want to get this sorted. So if null entity get ID, where ID entity get ID. Okay, so if that is null, if that isn't null, then we add that. Invalid parameter number of bound variables does not match the number of tokens. So we have name and we have internal name. Let's just double check that the test here. This is in status entity. Update test. Update name, internal name, and we are the ID. We create the status. We create the connection, we save that. Why are we... Okay, all right, set name. So I guess the question is, like, is it failing at this point on this save, or is it failing on this save? I think it's failing on this save, right? So we can do that. We can check that. We can comment this out. I'm just going to cut that. Actually, it's this, isn't it? All right. So let's save that. Run this. Yeah. Okay. So it's definitely the update. I just wanted to clarify that in my head. Saved entity test status 2. See in database status. So it's at this point that it's failing. Let's change the internal name as well. I'm not sure why that would be an issue, but see in database status, internal name and test. Name, status, scenario 1. Okay, let's see if we can run this with debug and see if there's anything useful. Okay. So we connect to the database. We now run that test. So it's connected to the database. We select from where the name and the internal name and the ID is this, and we pull out test status 4. That's what we're trying to achieve here. And this is the query that we're pulling. And that's the stack trace. So I see in status name test status. So that marries up with this. So okay, so it's definitely on the insert. Manager saved entity. Saved entity has the name, it has the internal name, and it also has the ID, right? So that's the ID on the where clause. Data, table, and where. Pulling out the array values, getting the last so if it isn't null, so if we do have that, so I could just do if that isn't empty or something, then we pass that in, and then we do the insert, the of all of those things. This is confusing. Values. We're now changing this obviously to be an update, right? So in the first instance we did an insert. Now we're doing an update. So we have the status, the name, the internal name. This is why I didn't delete this comment, because this commented code. So there's no need to put the ID in here, obviously, right? The ID doesn't go in that bit. The ID goes in the where clause. So the error that we're getting here, the invalid parameter number of bound parameters does not match the number of tokens, means that the these question marks, these are the number of bound parameters, right? So this, we've got too many, essentially we've got too many question marks and not enough fields, or vice versa. That's essentially what's going on here. And we're setting the name. We are setting the internal name. Okay. So that's 1, that's 2. So it might be the ID, and this is being set if we do the where clause, which is in here. Okay, so let's follow this through. So we pass that in as that. So that becomes an update. So we loop over the where clause, pulling out the key and getting the value. So this is where, and then that would be ID is equal to question mark. So yeah, and then that deals with that. So I'm going to do exactly what I did before, and in the test, where are we? In the test, I'm going to do a code set debug, passing in the SQL, right? We're going to return this now to be SQL rather than save. I'm going to just hack this up. So this is going to be a mixed response. So if null, then we do that. We can actually do if entity, well, let's just copy that. If that's not null, else, because we obviously need to make both sides work, right? So SQL, or we could just do if empty where. So that becomes the insert. And this becomes the update. And comment that out. And then that will return the entity. But if for any reason, if that isn't empty, so I am hacking this up tremendously, we return the SQL. In fact, I can do this before any of those things are actually put through. So yeah, and then what I'm going to do is just return SQL. Okay, so when we do the insert, it'll run through like normal, fine. But now we just want to just double check the query coming out of the update. So I'm going to just run that, and hopefully I haven't broken too much. Did that come back with anything? I'm looking for an insert query. Parameters, that's the select, that's the update. Here we go. This is the thing. So update status name, internal name, where ID is equal to question mark. That is exactly what we needed. That is exactly what we need. So, yes, now I see. Of course. It's very similar to the issue we had before. The data needs to be, we do need to have the ID in here, because it's at this point where we execute where the bound question marks, bound parameters do get altered to be, yes, I should have thought of that. I do apologize. Therefore, we need to put in data ID is equal to entity get ID. That's what we do need to do, but we can't do it from before we actually run the statement. We must do it after the statement has been ran. So we need to do it here, essentially, which is a bit messy. So just to recap, what's happening here is this is the update. That's what I wanted to pull out. And we are setting the name, the internal name, right? But we're doing it where the where the ID is a question mark, right? Where ID is 4, I think it's set to. So the actual build of the query is correct. That's actually perfectly fine, okay? The problem, though, is that when we scroll down to this point here, when we're actually running the execute and we're passing in the data, because the data is actually building the field names, right? It's not actually building the where clause. Sorry, where am I here? It's not actually building the where clause. It's building this. When we pass the data back, it's not going to bind the ID to this parameter. That's the issue. That's the problem here. And we can't add the ID to the data before the SQL is actually constructed, because we will then shoot ourselves in the foot again, because we are now putting in ID at this point, as well as this point, and yeah, bleh. So I think this is the issue. I hope this is. Let's see. I'm gonna see if we can set that at this point. Let's see. Okay, so the issue here, it failed asserting that 0 is greater than that. Is it because I've hacked this around so badly that let's have a little think here. We're returning the SQL. We don't want to be doing that. Okay, so that passed. Let's do a little bit of tidy up, because there needs to be an awful lot of tidy up here going on. We can now do the update and the insert. So I can remove this. I can. I should be able to now run query builder, insert or update, putting in data, putting in the table name, and also the optional where clause. That becomes the SQL. Whoops. Okay, so that's sorted. I'm just going to copy this, because this is the crucial part. Okay. Unfortunately, we're going to have to check again after the SQL has been created. We're going to have to do something to update that, which is not nice, because we're having to deal with it before the query, and then we're having to deal with it after the query, which really isn't nice at all. So I need to go away and think about how to best sort this out. I think one way is to distinguish the difference between parameters and field names. I think that's probably the best thing to do, because they're different. The bound parameters are the options that you're supplying, the data that you're supplying. The field names are obviously the field names, and you have to you have to support both the where clause and obviously the fields that you're inserting and updating. So I think I might do where clause and parameters. I might use those types of variables. But for now, though, I hope that this is going to run. So let's do that. And yes, that has passed. And we're still running debug, so we can remove that. Marvelous. Okay, so let's just run all of them and see what is going on. So we still have that error here. It's probably because of the same thing going on here. So I need to copy that, and we need to go into the save routine of Invoice Manager. So it's at this point, isn't it? Okay, so that's still failing. I'm gonna have to take this offline and have a think on that. It's still failing, but I need to shoot off and do some various other bits and pieces. So I do apologize for leaving this stream in a little bit of a half-baked position. I do apologize, but I will certainly take a look at this and then fix it, and then commit all the fixes up to the GitHub repository. Before I go, I just want to mention that I have put links down to the courses that I've been doing, I've created previously. So we have Docker in Motion, we have Pack Publishing, we've got Master Clean Coding in Python, and we've got the hands-on with microservices. Those two are with Pact, and the Docker Motion is with Manning Publications. Manning Publications at the moment has a $25 deal on all video courses. So if you click on that banner at the bottom, or in the show notes, there's a link to Docker Motion, and you follow that through, you'll get a discount on other courses, not just mine, but other video courses as well. And also, I just want to say a big thank you to Hostinger for sponsoring this stream and the previous streams as well. Hostinger has a deal at the moment, which is super awesome. It's 82% off plus a free domain name. And if you use the discount code Peter Fisher, you get a further 15% off. Links in the show notes below, and you can click that banner too. And today we have a podcast going out, which is super, super awesome. So do follow me on Twitter at HowToCodeWell, because today's guest is from Google, nonetheless. A Google Chrome developer relations fella named Adam Argyle, and he was talking about so much interesting stuff with CSS, with what they're doing at Google Chrome, the future of CSS, not just CSS, JavaScript as well. We were talking about PWAs, progressive web apps. We were talking about all the fantastic bits and pieces that he gets up to in his role as Google Chrome developer relations. And it was super interesting. So that's going out later on today. On the howtocodewell.fm website. So you can get that from your podcast players, because that's going to be on iTunes and Google Play. I think they've got a podcast player, and Spotify and all that good stuff. But also you can watch the interview as well. He's got some really awesome tattoos. So you can watch that on the How to Code Well YouTube channel as well. But for now, I need to dive off and do some work myself. I will be fixing this. This is an issue that I need to solve, and before we can progress. But for now, thanks for watching. Happy coding. I'll see you again soon. Cheers. Bye.